Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
I think our leader, Trudeau. I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Squirm as you might. It is really to stick on.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises. WTF.
The one we call.
Gentlemen, be me aboard.
Cells are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off.
Just like you,
culture of drugs.
Excuse me. I got the shotgun. Got the briefcase. It's on the game though, right?
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. So good to see everybody tonight. Hoping that it's going to work a little smoother than it did this afternoon for the audio. I didn't go to bed. I worked on this, and now we have this show ready to go.
Everyone has.
What's going on? Anyways, we've got this great committee meeting that we're going to watch. It's Mark Holland testifying in committee, and Mark Holland is Minister of Health. He's hostile. He has a meltdown in this one. I kind of feel like he's just got caught not telling the truth. Anyways, we've got some great conservative MPs in this video as well. And yeah, trying this new thing with flipping up a whole bunch of the texts. I won't have a lot of time to type. When I see you, that is me typing, saying hello. Like if your name popped up, that's me seeing. You can get what we're trying to do. People like to see themselves. I think getting a little text in the box from the host is fun, but I think this is more fun. So hopefully so. And we're just going to get straight into the video, guys. A couple of them here.
We have the Honourable Mark Holland, Minister of Health, and we would also like to welcome the officials accompanying him today from the Department of Health, Dr. Supriya Sharma, Chief Medical Advisor, and Lindsay Hollett, Assistant Deputy Minister, Regulatory Operation and Enforcement Branch.
There we go.
Thank you all for being with us here today. Minister Holland, this is familiar territory for you. You have 5 minutes for your opening statement, and you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to be back to committee to get an opportunity to talk to this bill. Let me say on the first order, natural health products are an extremely important part of the choices Canadians have as they make choices about their health and the products they wish to consume. But like all other products, it is essential we make sure they're safe. We can recall a tube of lipstick.
I'm just testing, guys, to see what it sounds like if I talk over. I'm sorry.
But this bill would gut our ability to recall natural health products. Folks, this is a cuckoo bananas bill, with all due respect. And let me just give you an example. The U.S. FDA, in an incidence detected the presence of filth, including animal feces, colored fibers, white paint chips, like material plastic adhering products.
Mr. Doherty has a point of order.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask if the minister, I wonder if he could just turn down his volume a little bit. It is awfully loud for those of us that do use the earpiece quite frequently.
So yeah, guys, I did some research on Mark Holland actually tonight. I went to his Wikipedia page, which you can't believe everything on Wikipedia, but you can trust that if they say you went to his school and graduated. Nothing about him is impressive. Just a regular political science degree. He worked at some banks. He worked for some charities. Like, that's not a good mix, is it? Anyways, Mark Holland is a corrupt guy, and he's just been on fire this week, burning himself up. He's such a goof.
And so I can't imagine how loud it is for the interpreters as well too. So if he can just be just a little less loud into the mic. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Minister.
Well, thank you. Can I go back a little bit? Can I rewind the tape a little bit? If I push my microphone away, I know, Todd, you like me have a good outdoor voice, so I'll push the microphone away. I appreciate the note. But let me go back if I could. So I'm going to hit the timer here. So the U.S. FDA indicated to Health Canada the presence of filth, including animal feces, colored fibers, paint chips, a plastic adhering product, and a gummy dietary supplement produced in Canada. Health Canada did a report, an investigation, and found rodent droppings and urine. So let's be really clear about what this bill would do. This bill would mean that rodent droppings and urine, we have no ability to pull it from the shelves. So folks, if you want feces contaminated natural health products sitting on shelves with Health Canada having no ability to pull them, then this bill is for you. But if you don't want your natural health products contaminated with things like fiberglass or paint chips or feces or urine, then I would suggest giving Health Canada the ability to pull those products is essential. Now, I've heard the committee talk about things like, well, you could do a stop sale. Absolutely. But a stop sale doesn't allow us to pull them from the shelves. And the idea that we can pull lipstick off the shelf, but not a natural health product, is a bananas notion. Now, the other thing that has been brought up is, well, fines. Oh my goodness, there's going to be $5 million of fines. It's not Health Canada that imposes these fines. It is the courts. Surely right now the maximum fine is $5,000. So do you want to say to a plant like I've just described here with rodent droppings and urine and paint chips, like, do you want to say to them, your maximum fine to the court is $5,000? And the most strange part is this is coming from a party that purports to be all about law and order. This is about giving the courts, not Health Canada, the tools they need to impose proper fines. Now, the other thing that, I just want to go over some of the things that are found, mold, lead. In the example of lead, we have somebody who was hospitalized with lead poisoning. Can you imagine leaving that on the shelves and not having the ability to pull it off? People talk about vitamins. Let's talk about, in February of 2021, a product with high levels of undisclosed vitamin D resulted in a teenager being hospitalized for 10 days. And after we find that, this bill would take away our ability to take that off the shelf? Folks, that makes no sense. The other thing this bill does is it deals with precision regulatory powers so that we can be nimble.
Sorry, gang, I don't mean to interrupt like that, but I've got to a little bit just to get used to the software and everything. Also, smash the like, consider subscribing, join up, become a member. We have a great time here, especially in the chat room. We are trying to make things better, so consider joining the group, subscribe, and at least smash the like. We can get that done. That's easy. Thank you.
And yes, that means, and I know this committee has been talking about issues about nicotine replacement therapy, and I'm glad the committee agrees that we should have the ability to protect our youth in that way. But what about pseudoephedrine? It's a precursor to making meth, right? Like, we need to have the ability to protect human health. And one of the things that's incredibly important, because let's talk about what this bill does and doesn't do. This bill isn't about labeling. This bill isn't about cost recovery. It has nothing to do with that. I'm happy to come back to this committee and have conversations on that topic. Those are good and important conversations that I want to have, but this bill has nothing to do with that, right? What this bill has to do with is killing Vanessa's Law. Vanessa's Law only comes into effect when there is a serious human health concern that is present. And I have been disappointed that there has been reference to a Deloitte study that was commissioned by industry that only looked at vitamins and minerals and only in hospital, and the Auditor General report is ignored. The Auditor General is talking about how serious this is, and the Auditor General's report is ignored, but an industry study in a very limited way done by Deloitte, paid for by industry, is suddenly what we're listening to. In terms of consultations, since, since 2016, 4,500 consumer and healthcare consultations. In 2019 alone, 70 different companies met. And I'll end on this point, Mr. Chair, which is in meeting with companies like Jameson, fantastic Canadian companies doing incredible things, hiring Canadians. That Canadian made in Canada means something, right? This costs people who comply or try to comply $0. But what it does do is when it says made in Canada and you sell that around the world, that it means something. It means that product's safe. It means it doesn't have feces in it. It means it doesn't have lead in it. It means it doesn't have undisclosed amounts of something that could make you sick in it. So if we can recall a tube of toothpaste, a lipstick, or a lettuce, why in God's name will we not be able to recall a natural health product?
Thank you, Minister. We'll now have rounds of questions from members, starting with the Conservatives for 6 minutes. Dr. Ellis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, you know, we've been down this road before with you, and I guess let's start with some simple questions. You like to use some very emotionally charged language. How many Canadians don't have a family doctor? Just a number. Simple.
Well, according to the most recent report that was just released by CIHI, it depends on province. So you say Ontario is at 88% who do.
Just the number.
The lowest province about 79%. Territories are lower, particularly Nunavut being the lowest.
Minister, I'm going to interrupt you because, again, you and I have gone down this road many times, and you said you've read the report. How many? I'll say it perhaps slowly and clearer for you. How many Canadians
across the country? It's known to be about 82% have.
Excuse me, Minister.
Okay.
Don't interrupt me. This is not your time for question. You'll have lots of time when you're in opposition to ask questions, if you so desire, or if you're able to keep your seat. That being said, how many Canadians don't have access to primary care in Canada? Just the number.
It's estimated at 6.5 million.
Actually, if you read the CIHI report, it says 5.4 million adults, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So tell me this, is that number going up or going down?
In every province and every territory, with I believe one exception, that the access to doctor is improving. There's been more doctors added, more nurses added. That's in the baseline CIHI report, so that's actually before our investment
again,
of $200 billion.
I don't think that's what I asked you, is the number of Canadians who do not have access to a primary care physician going up or going down?
Access is going up. That in the baseline report, we see every province and every territory access to more doctors, more nurses in almost every jurisdiction. That's a baseline report. That is before the interventions of our signed agreements with every province, every territory, $200 billion being applied.
But we know
and I
very
could talk
clearly,
about all the different ways that we're improving that circumstance, but conservative cuts certainly are going to help.
You know, again, if you don't want to be respectful, why do you even bother coming here?
I'm sorry, I don't find your questions or your demeanor respectful, so I don't know why I should reciprocate something that is not extended.
Point of order, Speaker. Point of order,
sir. Thank you, Chair. So I'm patiently listening to Mr. Ellis's questioning, and I'm failing to see any relevance to the topic in hand, which is this particular bill dealing with natural health products. So unless he's got a long-winded way of getting to the presentation that we heard and the bill that we are reviewing, like him to focus on the bill that we're talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's valid. I'm not sure that there's a connection between access to family doctors and this private members bill. This is not an examination of estimates where it's much more wide open. So
Point of order, though?
I do hope and expect that Dr. Ellis will get to the point. And I think it is a valid point of order. Did you have another one, Ms. Goodrich, or is it on this point?
I have a point of order on this point of order. The minister just very clearly said that he doesn't plan on respecting my colleague because he has decided that that is not something he's going to do. I don't think that is befitting of a formal committee meeting.
I think there's, I think it's reciprocal, quite frankly, and it's too bad. The witness merits respect, as does the person posing the question, and that's why don't we treat everyone with respect around here, please? I wouldn't pin it on one side or the other based on what I've heard so far. Did you have something you want to say, Minister?
My reflection was simply that if I'm attacked and treated in the way that I am, I'm going to respond. And absolutely, I'm here to answer questions.
Okay.
But I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that perhaps we could start with things germane to this bill.
Chair. Point of order. Realistically, to the witness, who controls this committee? Is it you, Chair, or is it the minister?
Please, Dr. Ellis, the minister has the floor.
It's ridiculous.
The minister has the floor.
Ridiculous.
I do not, I can tell you that and look, I was in opposition. I've been in the position that they are in where you ask questions.
Okay.
And I am saying that there's not only is the conversation not relevant, but I don't think that it's at all respectful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Now, Mr. Doherty has a point of order.
Mr. Chair, it is commonplace within this committee, as well as other committees that I've sat on, that the length of a question is then therefore applied to the length of the answer. Where the frustration comes with this minister is that he tends to go on beyond the length of the time that it took to ask the question. As you know, members are given a specific allotment of time, and it is frustrating when you have ministers appear, not just this minister, but other ministers appear. And I know that this minister is well versed in the art of what we call ragging the puck, and so are other ministers, taking up the time of each member. So when my colleague and others ask a simple question, just a number, that's all that they look to receive. If we wanted the statistics for each province, I would offer through you, Mr. Chair, that would then bode the answer that the minister was going down. I can see that my colleague has done research and has a number of questions that he would like to ask. So I would ask through you to our minister is that if and when he can be concise, to please be concise.
A point of order, Chair.
Yes, Dr. Ellis.
Yeah, I know this is painful for you. I understand that. But since when does a witness get to direct a committee? All I suggest to you, and I know you won't like this, but do your job.
Ms. Cito, do you have a point of order, or do you want to intervene on this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we invited a minister. Let's be respectful. When we are asked the question, minister has the right to give the answer. That's my point. Thank you.
3 minutes and 37 seconds.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, Minister, before all of the bombast, back to the questioning here. When we begin to look at Canadians, of course, because of your mismanagement of the health file, they have to look after themselves by virtue of turning to things such as natural health products. So your ineptitude, of course, has led many Canadians, of course, which we've heard from, using natural health products. That being said, how many Canadian seniors are hospitalized every year because of pharmaceutical products?
I believe that I was here for natural health products. I don't blame the member for not wanting to ask questions about this terrible bill. I wouldn't want to talk about this terrible bill either. So I understand his desire to talk about anything but this awful bill. I could tell him, because I'll bring it back to the bill, 772 severe adverse reactions from natural health products. that this member is
Once
supporting a
again,
bill that would
Minister,
not allow our
I'm gonna
ability to recall
interrupt you,
products that
as
have
is
those
the
kinds
convention
of,
of
so
this
the types of
committee.
hospitalizations.
Chair, would
Minister,
you,
Minister, please, go ahead, Dr. Ellis.
Chair, you know, clearly what we're seeing here is an aversion to answering questions. Very simply, this will connect. I know it's difficult for you. How many Canadian seniors are hospitalized every year due to pharmaceutical products?
I understand that it's
just the number, Minister.
I understand that it's, I get the same amount of time as he asked the question. Is that the rule?
Yep.
I understand that it's difficult for you to understand that I'm here on natural health products, that is the purpose of this study, and I understand why you wouldn't
Thank you very much,
answer
Minister.
questions
I
on
will
it.
interrupt you once again. Just the number. How many?
Talk about natural health products. It is the purpose of this study,
so
and I
once
want to
again-
talk about it. I'm not going to let you
Thank
off
you,
the
Minister.
hook to not talk about your own bill.
Thank you, Minister. Once again, I'll move along because you clearly have no clue how many Canadian seniors are hospitalized every year due to pharmaceutical products, which again are under your purview. Would you care to answer that on behalf of Canadians or no? Simple answer. If you don't want to, or you don't know the answer, it's okay.
What I'm not going to do is engage in a attempt to not talk about this bill. You have not asked any questions related to this bill because you don't want to talk about how deadly this bill is. The fact that you would leave
Thank you very much, Minister.
products on the
I'll
shelves that are
interrupt you
dangerous
there.
to Canadians' health.
You know, the difficulty, of course, is, Minister, is that 13,000 Canadians are harmed by pharmaceutical products every year. Seniors hospitalized, 13,000, just because people need a reference. All you want to do is talk, you know, down to Canadians about feces and lead, all your fantastical words, of course. That's what your attempt to do. Minister, very simple question. How much does the NHP industry contribute to the GDP of Canada on a yearly basis?
Enormously. It is a booming industry,
Just
a
the number,
multi-billion-dollar industry. Am I allowed to answer the question in the same time that you
You've got
took to
another
ask the
25
question?
seconds to answer the question.
Thank you. It is a booming industry. It is a growing industry. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But one of the things that will protect that industry is ensuring that that industry is afforded the protection of being able to recall
Thank you very
bad
much,
products.
Minister. Your time is up, but once again, I'll ask you just for the number.
Look, Mr. Chair, do I still have?
Yes, go ahead.
So one of the things.
Sorry to interrupt, gang, and it's very challenging to type and do what I'm doing, which is monitoring everything and showing it as well. It's just challenging. Anyways, to anybody that's new in the group, like, or has used to me saying hello, when you see your message going up, that is me saying hello. Like, I see that you're here and I'm glad that you're here, but I think that people might enjoy seeing a lot of their posts. And if it gets really busy, I won't be able to get through all of them. But in the meantime, I do hope you folks enjoy it. I hope it's not too distracting. I think it might be fun.
When you're talking about adverse effects of pharmaceuticals, the idea that there's adverse effects on pharmaceuticals, so therefore you do nothing about natural health products? You just leave the people who have adverse effects for natural health products with nothing?
Thank you.
How you draw your own conclusions. That being said, because of your negative effects on the natural health product industry, how many businesses are saying they're considering shuttering operations in Canada?
Vanessa's law does not affect any compliant or any business attempting to be compliant at all. Cost of businesses that are compliant or attempting to be compliant is exactly $0.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. That's your time. Thank you. Mr. Nakvi, please, for 6 minutes.
Monsieur le Président, question de règlement.
Oui.
Mr. Chair, point of order. Please, listen up. The Conservatives had 6 minutes. We're now at 11:25, meaning that somehow we would need to, we had an hour with the minister, and I'd like us to have an hour with the minister, Mr. Chair. I would like that to be established right now, because I have serious questions to put to the minister. I would like the opportunity to ask those questions, and I would like to have the assurance that we can have the minister here for an hour, because we are only left with 25 minutes. So is the minister committing to stay here for an hour? Thank you. An hour of questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Chair Minister. Thank you for being here. And I am quite interested in this bill. I've done a fair bit of research.
This is 2 days old.
on this bill, and I'm really concerned by its impact on the health and well-being of Canadians. Let me just start by making it very clear and hearing from you directly that this bill does not cover the issues around labeling and cost recovery, and it only covers the issue dealing with recall of products that are unsafe for Canadians. Am I correct?
Yes, along with the ability to use precision regulating powers to deal with things like we did with nicotine replacement therapy, or what I was talking about with pseudoephedrine as a precursor to meth, as an example.
So, given that it's got a very focused purpose behind this bill, Bill 368, what concerns do you have if this was passed into law, and how, in your view, it's going to increase the risk to the health of Canadians?
Well, this is an absolute threat to the health of Canadians. This bill is a terrible, awful bill. And look, I get it. If I was the Conservatives, I wouldn't want to ask questions or talk about it either. But here's the problem. And I've gone through the example of the rat feces and the urine. Let me go through some others. Let's talk about a young woman in 2021 who was taking natural health products that had unacceptable levels of lead. You should have no lead. Led to her poisoning. You know, this really endangered this person's health. When you're talking about this vitamin D case, also in 2021, undisclosed levels of vitamin D, teenager hospitalized for 10 days. Like, I just picked these out as some of the 772 serious adverse effects from 2021 to 2023. That's a 2-year period.
Guys, I would bet your next mortgage payment that he's one of the 11. Yeah, he's so corrupt. He went and saw Navjeet Bains before he testified. He's one of the dirtiest guys in the entire cabinet for certain.
Period. Now, no one is disputing the importance of natural health products. They're incredibly important. They should be available to Canadians. But what does it mean when it says made in Canada? It means you can trust it, right? It means that you're not going to leave something on the shelf with contaminated by rat feces, or contaminated by fiberglass, or contaminated by lead. And the idea that we would take away our ability to recall that is I think would be frightening to most Canadians. And you know, so yes, one of my objectives is to pull this out of the subreddits where this has been lingering, where there's a lot of false information, and to pull it out into the light of day. Because I am certain that most Canadians would be horrified at what this bill would do.
So, I know my Conservative friends love to talk about common sense. So at a common sense level, the current law, the Vanessa law, what it does, if the product is unsafe, it allows Health Canada, from a compliance perspective, be able to take that harmful product off the shelves so that somebody who's looking for that product is not able to use it because it will be detrimental to health. That's something Canadians expect of their government to do. Am I correct? And that's what Vanessa law does.
Absolutely. I think that as health minister, the safety of Canadians is my #1 concern, as I know it is for every member here. So we have a duty of care that anything that is ingested or used by Canadians, that we ensure that it's safe and that it's not going to make them sick. This bill would jeopardize that.
So there's a narrative that's building out there that in the absence of Vanessa's law, that somehow Health Canada already have some powers, like stop sale powers, that would allow for that. And we heard that from Mr. Calkins, the sponsor of the bill, repeatedly. Can you walk us through how that power does not work, and what does Vanessa bill, which this particular PMB guts it, helps ensure safety for Canadians?
Right. So let me give you a specific example and where it could have been used. So in 2019, Health Canada received a consumer complaint. They had an adverse reaction leading to hospitalization after taking an unlicensed Crantum product. The Health Canada requested the firm stop the sale of the product. So that's the power we had at the time, to say, look, you got to stop selling this product. The problem is that we had no power to pull it from the shelves. So it just sits there on the shelf with dangerously contaminated. And that leaves us to, what, beg and plead for the individual to take this off the shelf, to chase down, the places where it might be, and ask them, pretty please, take it off the shelves. Like, it doesn't exist anywhere else that we would allow that kind of thing to happen. And so what this Vanessa's law does is it makes sure two very important things. One, for that plant that I was talking about that was contaminated with animal feces and urine, that we can, A, recall their products so that nobody is using those products that are contaminated, and B, empower the courts, not us, the courts, to, in a judicial process, be able to determine what is an appropriate fine for their negligence, to ensure that there is a penalty associated with that negligence. Now, the last point, and this is an extremely important point, is that if you are compliant or trying to be compliant, then this never gets triggered. So if for a company that's a good actor, the cost of this of Vanessa's law is exactly $0. In fact, I would argue, by undermining the Made in Canada brand, by creating a circumstance where there is uncertainty about whether or not products on the shelves are safe, that makes Canadian products worth less. It makes Canadian companies at risk in terms of their global brand recognition, because when you talk to a company, I'm sorry to pick on Jameson, I was there recently. Jameson's an amazing company. When they sell around the world, what they'll tell you is that Canadian, Made in Canada, Health Canada regulated brand is worth so much to them as they export around the world. We have to protect that.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. TRUDEAU, pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
TRUDEAU for 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a bit surprised with the tone, the opening tone of the minister with regard to this issue, because if we're discussing this bill, it's simply because government introduced in shady bill C-47, it's those obligations. So very sincerely, I think they camouflaged all of this while they were in conversation with industry in order to ensure that we're able to distinguish natural health products from other products. And that's the basic point. And when you come in committee, and I apologize, Mr. Minister, but you had an attitude and a disrespectful tone with regard to members here. And also, if I was a member of industry, of pharmaceutical industries, I would not be very happy. You're very specific in your words, saying that it's an entire disaster. There's been 251 recalls on natural products from Health Canada, and out of these 250 recalls, I hear that there were 31 public notices, and these notices are only put out when the problem is really serious. And out of this, from these ones, what was the reaction and collaboration from the companies involved, Mr. Minister? Well, I'm really not happy. I mean, I don't want to know if you're happy or not, but I'd like you to address my question. I think there's an equal tone for each question. Mr. TRUDEAU, on the minute. So in the first instance, yes, I'm unhappy because the bill here threatens the health of everyone across the country, and it is ridiculous, the debate on this bill. Because there's a lot of wrong information, and that's the reason why I'm here, to clearly speak on the fact that this is a threat to our health in the first case. Now, secondly, there's a difference between the bill here and the stakes of this bill, which removes products with contaminants, and we contrast this with other stakes. And yes, there are different stakes. There's the ability to increase the manner in which we manage natural products, and that's an entirely different conversation altogether, which has nothing to do with the bill, and which has no relevance to the current bill. Thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you. So you would like to have your recall right? I'll give it to you, and I'll introduce an amendment to this bill. So as soon as I bring an amendment to this bill and I give you that right to recall, is the bill still that irrelevant to you? Well, I'm very open to any changes as long as it protects the stakes that I raised here. Because if it's possible to recall products that are a threat to people's health, and if there's the possibility of introducing an amendment in a way that protects the health of everyone else across the country, yes, I'd be completely amenable to that. But that's another discussion altogether. But between you and me, I'm completely open to that idea. Well, Mr. Minister, I'm announcing that I'll make that amendment. And I think that natural health products have nothing to do in the Vanessa law. So this will allow us to be able to carry on the conversations that you're having in order to find points of convergence between the industry and the willingness of this industry to clean up things with respect to the poor quality products. And I think that it's interesting to allow them the opportunity to do things right. Having said this, I have another question for you. Nicotine-based products constitute one of the main objections to the draft bill. If I introduce an amendment, Mr. Minister, to the effect that nicotine-based products will not be targeted by this bill, at that point in time, do we address your health needs? Because for me, nicotine is a drug, and I consider this to be a hard drug in terms of dependency, and this should not be considered as a natural health product. Now, at that point in time, will the bill be more acceptable to you, Mr. Minister?
I think I've talked clearly about the things that really worry me about this bill. And I spoke very forcefully about that because I need it to be heard. This is a real danger. In the second order, conversations around the management of things like nicotine replacement therapies, which don't have tobacco, using an act that's really for tobacco and vaping. I'm willing to have that conversation. I understand your objective, but I would say, what about the precision regulatory ability to go after pseudoephedrine, which is a precursor to methamphetamine? We need to have the ability writ large to be able to act in an agile way to an ever-evolving environment. Because unfortunately, for example, on the manufacture of illicit drugs, a lot of things that can seem very innocuous can suddenly be used in very dangerous ways. So maintaining that precision regulatory power is something that I think is very important to protect the country. But I would say, to your other point, and every conversation you and I have had, Luke, has been centered in very reasonable positions. And I apologize for speaking in English, but things like pseudoephedrine and precursors to methamphetamine is not something I'd say well in French.
Merci, Mr. Thériault. Et le ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Thériault. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we all understand that the natural health products industry is an important industry, and that so many Canadians, millions of Canadians, depend on natural health products. I count myself among them. And so I have some questions on the bill. But before I come to that, I couldn't resist, given Dr. Ellis's line of questioning, in asking you to dispel a couple of myths that have occurred or been passed around the Health Committee table. The first being that the dental care program that the NDP pushed for and worked with successfully doesn't exist. The second, that pharmacare has no future. So my questions to you are simply this. First off, how many Canadians have benefited from the Canadian dental care program to date in the first 24 weeks of the program? Secondly, how many provinces have indicated an interest in signing up to the pharmacare program that will cover diabetes medication and devices and contraception?
We have a point of order from Mr. Doherty.
You've got to be kidding. You've got to be kidding.
Go ahead, Mr. Doherty.
I'm not kidding.
You've got to be kidding.
Respectfully, Mr. Chair, where's the relevance to this? Next, you're going to have the minister talking about Canadians gargling with gasoline, which we know is a complete falsehood. At least Dr. Ellis had relevance towards his line of questioning, comparing pharmaceuticals to the natural health products. Far be it from the NDP to want to cover all the bases and keep whatever semblance of coalition with their friends there. But Mr. Speaker, I ask you, I won't be as blunt as my colleague, but please, there has to be some relevance to the topic that we're talking about here. But if our friend from the NDP wants to wax on and on and on and use his time to ask these type of questions, that, you know, far be it from me, but there has to be some relevance. That Mr. Nakvi spoke eloquently about relevance, so we're doing the same.
Sauce for the goose comes to mind.
Sorry.
No. This is a procedural.
Casey always hangs his head. If you watch a lot of this stuff, that most of the people around here do, Sean Casey's always like head down and frustrated. I think he's embarrassed to be a Liberal right now. He is probably the most outspoken. There's a couple others that are right up there, but he's definitely sick of being in that caucus.
Point of order, Minister, and I'm going to rule on this, and we're going to move on, and you'll be able to provide evidence. So, Mr. Nakvi was right. Mr. Doherty was right. It didn't change the fact that there was a line of questioning that wasn't related to the bill earlier in the day. There is a large discretion when it comes to relevance in any parliamentary proceeding. This is the first question coming from Mr. Julian. I trust that he will either tie it into the bill or will dispense with this and move on. But I'm going to give the floor back to Mr. Julian just so that we see where he's going before doing anything more drastic. And it is normal to afford some latitude before intervening.
There's an assertion that a lie occurred.
Point of order, Chair.
Mr. Minister, please. Mr. Julian has the
His
floor.
name is Rylan. It's a real story. You can visit him in Dalhousie University.
Back to Mr. Julian, please. Excuse me, Mr. Julian has the floor. Mr. Julian, I recognize Mr. Julian.
Two questions, and I'd ask the minister to respond.
Look, I think the facts are so clear in this case. I kind of agree. It doesn't make a lot of sense to talk about this bill. It's an awful, terrible bill. But I'm happy, I guess, now at this point to take other types of questions. Yeah, I mean, it's true. The Conservatives said that the dental care program didn't exist. And we're about to hit 1 million people who've received care on the precipice of it. Now, the last time I checked, 1 million people is a long way off of not existing. And in terms of pharmacare, just as we've been getting it done on dental care, we're going to do it on pharmacare. And we've got a lot of very interested provinces. We'll be signing deals. And I'll tell you why this is big, because something like take diabetes. Diabetes costs us $30 billion every single year. And it's going up every single year. People getting their medication matters. We have to be upstream. We have to be preventing. And I'll bring it back to this bill. That includes preventing adverse outcomes that are entirely preventable. Vanessa's law allows us to prevent people from getting sick by making sure products aren't safe or pulled from shelves. Why on earth would we want people winding up in hospital from something that was entirely avoidable?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You didn't actually answer my second question, but hopefully you can do that a little bit later on. Coming back to the bill. Now, Blaine Calkins, who's the originator, Mr. Calkins of the bill, came forward at this committee and said the following in terms of the powers that Health Canada already has, and I'm quoting him. They have the ability to stop a sale. They have border power for personal use imports where they can seize any product that they want. They can revoke a site license for any of the sites, and they can mandate a label change anytime and add warnings they want to products. They can inspect site licenses. They can expect any product. They approve every natural health product that is out there, the number, and they can revoke a natural product number and cancel the product. So that was his testimony. How do you respond to that? And are those all powers that Health Canada has now? And if so, why aren't those powers being used?
So great question. And the answer is they are being used, but the problem is we can't stop at retail, right? So
Two flips. I think the reason that they want to medicate them is because they want us fat and medicated, living in apartments, owning nothing. They don't care if we even really work. It's so apparent.
what Vanessa's law allows us to do, and let me use the example where because you talked about a foreign jurisdiction identifying a contamination problem. When the U.S. FDA said you've got a plant that is full of feces and urine, right here, Dr. Ellis, it's a real case, and this is a situation where
Point of order, Chair. Point of order from Dr. Ellis. So interestingly enough, the characterization the minister says is a plant was full of feces. I would like to have him table the evidence of the plant full of feces.
Well, when you get the floor, you get a chance to ask him to do that. Go ahead, Mr. Julian.
Maybe there's an acceptable level of rodent feces and urine that Mr. Ellis has for a natural health product facility. I don't have that, right? I mean, if rat poop and urine is in a facility, you can debate how much it was. Maybe if there's only a certain amount of rat poop and urine, that's enough for you. It's not enough for me. That there's an instance when the U.S. FDA tells us this. Yes, we can stop from importing anymore, but anything that's on the other side of the border and on store shelves, we can't do anything about. Vanessa's law allows us to take those products off the shelves. That's what's so critical. We lack the ability today. And here's the second most important point, and let's talk about that facility. That facility, it now only the maximum fine the courts can issue is $5,000.
Have a good night, Janet.
And I would say that's a cost of doing business. Why have a clean or healthy site producing products if the worst thing a court can do to you is give you a $5,000 fine? The courts need the ability to scale those fines to make sure that bad actors are appropriately punished.
How much time do I have? I want to come back to revoking the natural health product number and canceling the product and the impacts that you have, Health Canada has already, the abilities, the powers. But I also want to follow up on Mr. Theriault's question, which was 350 recalls that were voluntary in nature. Of those recalls, how many did the company not cooperate, where the company was non-compliant? Because I think regarding this bill, and the impacts of this bill, we need to make sure that there is a problem. And part of that is whether or not companies have been compliant with recalls that have been issued voluntarily.
So alternative officials for the exact number, I can say there's largely been compliance. The concern is that when there isn't, that we lack the ability to do anything about it. And as you could appreciate, if you have a really flagrant violation, and I just gave you an example of one right here that was very flagrant, and there are other examples that are flagrant, that if we don't have the ability in court to be able to have a penalty that's commensurate with the size.
That's funny, Mr. Murray.
So as an example, you may only have a very small number of cases where somebody commits a crime, but you still need a mechanism to deal with it when they do commit a crime, right? And so that deterrent effect is extremely important, and our ability to protect consumers when there is a flagrant violation is extremely important. I don't know if you want to speak to the specific number.
Very briefly, please.
Yes. So as the minister mentioned, the industry is very compliant, very cooperative, most regulated parties. What we have had is instances, and they are a small number, but serious instances where the time taken to convince a company to undertake a recall is weeks into the months, or a company, again, a small number, refuses, and we need to find a workaround, someone else in the supply chain who is willing to work with us.
Thank you. Thank you. That's your time. Thank you, Ms. Hollett. Next, Mr. Moore, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Later, True Blue.
Minister, does Health Canada commission studies? And does Health Canada expect Canadians to take value from those studies?
Absolutely.
Does Health Canada contract with Deloitte?
Yes.
Okay. So you expect the studies that you have commissioned with Deloitte to add value to Canadians, but if anyone else commissions a study, maybe with Deloitte, maybe someone else, you completely undermine it. You came in here this morning, you started your remarks by saying, with all due respect, and then you completely dumped all over an industry, which according to this Deloitte study, which I have no reason to doubt, new labeling and restrictions are likely to add substantial cost. The results show the new legislation will have dire consequences for the sector and the broader economy. The sector is mainly dominated by small businesses of less than 50 employees. Growth in Canada from 4.3 billion in total sales in 2007 to 13.2 billion in total sales in 2001. So as is so often the case, your government and yourself are going to be bringing the hammer down, as only a Liberal government can, on hardworking entrepreneurs and small business, all the while turning a blind eye to criminals, for example. And this Deloitte study, which I referenced, and have no reason to doubt, shows that 20% of the businesses I just mentioned would move their operations outside of Canada with your government's heavy-handed approach. So why would you want businesses to move to the U.S., where Canadians would continue to purchase their products online, but now Health Canada will not have any ability to have oversight?
Thank you for your question. In the first order, I didn't dump on the industry, I dumped on the bill. Two very different things. The industry is fantastic. The point that I made is the bill is awful. The second point is that my criticism of the Deloitte study was that it only dealt with vitamins and minerals, and it only dealt with hospital settings. It was very, very narrow in scope. And yeah, it was commissioned by the industry. The third point is most of the issues that you're talking about that affect industry deal with labeling and deal with cost recovery, which this bill has absolutely nothing to do with. The exact cost, to go back to be very clear, because you said you talk about turning a blind eye to criminals. A blind eye to criminals would be leaving a $5,000 fine for an incredibly negligent firm. If you are compliant, sir, you have absolutely nothing to fear from this bill. In fact, if you're working to be compliant, you have nothing to be fearful of this bill. It is only in cases of egregious negligence where these measures kick in. And it is not us who adjudicates the penalty, it is the courts. And I would suggest to you that somebody is negligent, resulting in potentially a death or somebody being hospitalized, is a gross form of negligence that needs to be dealt with in the courts. And it would, in fact, be blind, to use your nomenclature, it would be blind to leave the system in place that would allow that kind of gross negligence to occur. And lastly, in terms of the Canadian brand, why would you go and buy something from any country other than one that had the best regulatory regime to make sure they're safe? And whether or not it was smoke-free Ontario or seat belts, I heard these arguments again and again and again. You do something that creates safety, you're going to kill business. 10 out of 10 times, not the case. Improved business, improved safety, improved outcomes.
Minister, you know,
I hurt two shoulders at the same time and ended up being prescribed Oxycontin. It's a nasty one. It's real bad.
Took note of one very loose thread that you mentioned here about a precursor to meth. How do you reconcile that? Everyone acknowledges, I would think, I know that you have been defending the indefensible as of late, including defending this Prime Minister that 4 out of 5 Canadians want to step down, but you continue to defend him, and now you're defending your government's approach, heavy-handed approach that targets small business while turning a blind eye, as I mentioned, to real criminals. You will recall your government's Bill C5. You introduced the subject of meth into this discussion, so I'm going to ask you a question on this. How do you reconcile your government's legislation that says for importing and exporting Schedule I drugs, for producing Schedule I drugs in Canada, and that means running a meth lab, for example. Now an individual convicted of running a meth lab or importing meth or importing a precursor product for meth or cocaine or heroin, now they can serve their sentence from the comfort of their home. I think Canadians now know with hindsight that your government got it wrong when it came to illegal drugs. But how do you reconcile coming down?
Pelosi. I'm seldom one to do this, but this has come up repeatedly. How is this relevant at all with the private members bill, a conservative private members bill that we're here to discuss?
Well, there's been numerous questions of questionable relevance come up. As I indicated before, I'm going to be consistent and allow latitude on this. The problem with allowing latitude on this, Mr. Moore, is that you're out of time. So if you could bring your question to a conclusion, we'll allow the minister.
Sorry, guys. I've got a phone call that I'm going to take. I'm just going to mute myself, but we'll keep this going.
30 seconds to respond, and we'll go on with the next person on the list. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just about to conclude because the minister mentioned meth. How does he reconcile coming down with a heavy hand on hardworking New Brunswick small businesses while allowing those that run meth labs to serve their sentence if they're caught and convicted from the comfort of their own home?
First of all, the only
response,
thing,
please.
yeah,
Minister.
sure. And look, I wouldn't want to ask questions about this horrible bill either, but in the first order, the only people that are coming down hard on are people who are negligent and wildly out of compliance. That's the only thing that the Vanessa's law does. So if there's anybody in New Brunswick who is being come down hard on, it's because they're wickedly negligent, right? I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. And with respect to the policies that you talked about on crime, Newt Gingrich proposed the same approach you're talking to crime. It he called it the greatest disaster of his career. Every place it's been tried, it's an abject and total failure. I will stick to science. I will stick to data. I will stick to evidence. And I will not follow approaches that, you know, I guess sound good for a slogan, but have no basis in evidentiary truth.
Thank you, Minister. Ms. Sidhu, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister and whole team for being with us. Approximately 70% of Canadians use a natural health product. And you talked about the stick to data, stick to evidence. But Minister, removing natural health products from the definition will remove Health Canada's ability to recall natural health products. Health Canada would be able to recall a head of lettuce contaminated with E. coli or milk contamination with Listeria, but unable to recall a natural health product contaminated with the feces or, you know, you named few. How it is fair for all Canadians' health? Can you explain that?
Well, it's a great question, and of course it isn't fair and it is dangerous, but moreover, I've had the opportunity to meet with all kinds of companies, and what they tell me is they want a fair and level playing field, and I think that it's deeply unfair to create a circumstance where good actors who respond quickly to stop sale orders, who voluntarily comply, are left to compete with companies that don't, and that's what would happen here. If you're a bad actor, all you face is a $5,000 fine. That's a cost of doing business. Basically, you can operate however out of control way you want to, and we're put in a terrible position of trying to comply and create fairness. And I can tell you, for the companies that I talk to, they don't want that. You know, companies, we got a lot of fantastic Canadian companies employing people, growing their business, multi-billion dollars. And what they're asking for is to make sure that Health Canada has got the powers, that they're keeping a level playing field, where the good actors, the ones who are trying to keep people safe and be a good business and have good business practices, aren't put in a disadvantaged position because there are weak regulations to deal with bad actors. And that's what this is about. And to me, that's fundamentally fair.
Thank you. The Public Account Committee, including CPC members Jeremy Patzer, Philip Lawrence, requested Health Canada revise the fines and penalties. But in place of NHP's their 2022 report, government agreed with the Public Accounts Committee as the lack of a proper determinant has led to high level of non-compliance within the NHP industry. Why do you think the CPC have a flip-flop on this issue? Can you talk about that?
I don't know. I mean, I think that in fairness, there's been an enormous amount of misinformation. And that misinformation has created a lot of fear in businesses. And when I actually talk to small businesses who are in this space, and you explain what Vanessa's law does and why, if they're compliant or even trying to be compliant, they have nothing to fear, this is good for their business. They're fully supportive of it. And so I think we have to, and it's one of the reasons I'm talking so plainly today, we've got to cut through the misinformation. It's really doing an enormous amount of damage. And by the way, the false and misleading claims are, like, one of the things that we have to have a conversation in this committee, all the claims with products that cure cancer, just to pick on that as an example. There are people who then take products, think it's curing their cancer, and are avoiding traditional treatments, right? I don't mind you using something in conjunction with your traditional treatment, but you should be talking to your physician about that. And when companies are making bold-faced false claims, that can change consumer behavior in a way that's injurious to their health. So that's what I'm concerned about here. And I think that this false argument that somehow it hurts the economy to have strong regulation is malarkey. We know the natural health product. I hear from consumers all the time, I like to buy my products from Canada because I know they're well regulated. I know that what's in the bottle is going to be safe and that I can trust what's in there. What a marketing opportunity. What an advantage over other countries. Why would we lose that? Why would we ever do anything to undercut that? Because we take away one of the greatest competitive advantages that we have that allow so many different companies that are Canadian in this space to be booming. I am their biggest ally. I want them to succeed. I want them to be selling more all around the world. And it is my deep and heartfelt belief that having strong regulations and protecting those products is exactly how we get it done.
Thank you. Do you have more time? Okay, do you want anything else? Do you want to give a message to Canadians?
No. I think that the big thing here is that I just get frustrated with the attempt to use misinformation to confuse these businesses that are just trying to make a living, and they're getting letters and false information and spun left and right and told things that are completely false. Most of the issues that they're being told to worry about, this bill has nothing to do with. And I would welcome if the committee wants to have a conversation in a more in-depth way about how we can do a better job with natural health products and supporting them. I'm totally open to that. Luke asked a very fair question, which is there a way to amend this bill in a way that isn't injurious to people's health that improve the industry? I'm absolutely open to that. But killing Vanessa's law and the ability to recall, that's just not smart. And that is actually going to hurt industry as well as public safety.
Thank you, Minister. Et maintenant, plus de questions raisonnables de M. TRUDEAU pour 2 minutes et
Now,
demie.
more reasonable questions from Mr. TRUDEAU for 2.5 minutes. Well, let's not exaggerate. It's not about killing the Vanessa law here. Yeah, well, maybe I should
calls were non-compliant companies. And was
Yeah,
it one
I'll turn it
actor
over.
or a number of companies?
And I'm not, if we have the exact number, I'll allow it to be given, but I just want to say in front, part of the problem, of course, is that when you encounter a situation like the one I talked with the US FDA flag something, and we don't have the power to pull it from the shelves, those are real situations. They have happened. They don't need to happen a lot to be very dangerous, but I'll pass it over.
Of the 350 recalls that have been mentioned, and a member mentioned this previously, those led to 31 public advisories. Of those 31, we had 3 companies that were simply uncooperative, so 10%. But I would ask members not to forget that what's missing in that number is those that it took a lot of time, energy, and hours.
I understand the delays, but coming back to the issue of non-compliance, so there were 3 cases of non-compliance or 3 companies that had more than 3 cases of non-compliance?
Of the 350, 31 were serious enough that we had to do a public risk comms, and of those 31 where risk comms were required, 3 of the 31 were uncooperative.
And those are 3 different companies?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful for us to. Yeah. So coming back to 2 other questions that weren't answered, the issue around, as Mr. Calkins had testified, that every natural health product number is approved by Health Canada, that Health Canada has the ability to revoke a natural health product number and cancel the product. I wanted to come back to ask you that, Minister. And with a few seconds left as well, if you could answer my question about the number of provinces that have stepped up on pharmacare, that are interested in the pharmacare program. And thank you for the information of 1 million Canadians who benefited from dental care. I think that's hopefully the Conservative MPs will send out to their ridings as well.
Yeah, it's the problem is it's not immediate, so that those products continue to exist out there and be in a retail landscape, so that even once you exercise that power to arrest it, it continues to exist out there. And every day that it exists is somebody who could be hospitalized. So I would say that while there are 3 that were intransigent and really were very difficult in terms of compliance, the 31 that were in a state that were so serious that you had to issue that advisory are circumstances where those products were staying on shelves for an unacceptable length of time, really risking human life in the ways like I talk about the people being hospitalized for lead poisoning or for having too much vitamin D. Like these are people going to hospitals in those instances.
Thank you, Minister.
I'll have to come back on the others.
We're past the top of the hour, but there's been a lot of wrangling. If you could stay for 10 minutes, we could get 1 round each from the Liberals and the Conservatives, and that would take us to the end of the 2nd round. Do you have 10 minutes?
Sound okay? I have a press conference that I'm supposed to be in a prep for, but could we maybe just do 3 minutes each? Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay, if that's the time you have, we'll take it. So next up is Ms. Goodridge for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So was there a gender-based analysis done prior to the omnibus bill through the Budget Implementation Act of 2023 performed? Yes or no?
Yes, and with respect to using the Budget Implementation Act for regulations is normal practice. It's done by conservative and liberal governments.
Yes, I'm fully aware. Was a gender-based analysis specifically done on the natural health product piece?
The answer is yes. We'd be happy to provide it with you.
Please table it with the committee. So my next question is, did you look at the impacts on traditional indigenous medicines and how this will impact them? Because this is going to be devastating to traditional harvesters.
No, it won't be, because it only deals with non-compliance and those who aren't trying to comply, so it would in no way affect those that were trying to comply with Health Canada regulations.
But Minister, you are using effectively a sledgehammer rather than a rubber mallet when it comes to natural health products. You are treating people like they are criminals before they've actually done anything wrong. That is precisely, you say you are supportive of this industry and you talk at length about FECES and other things. That is a very small minority of situations. And bad actors, you have other tools in your disposal. If you really wanted to deal with them, you could create specific rubber mallet sort of solutions to deal with them. But you sit there shaking your head, playing politics with this rather than actually working with people. So why won't you look at common sense solutions to actually create ways to keep Canadians safe, but allow access to natural health products?
Well, first of all, in the deepest part of my soul, I believe that repealing Vanessa's law is bad for human health. It has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with safety. Secondly, with respect to a sledgehammer versus rubber mallet, this only comes into effect where there's a serious violation and where their human health is at risk. That's I don't have any ability to use these powers until they're
Minister,
in the situation.
I've got very few.
I'm sorry.
I have 3 minutes in total.
Was there equivalency in a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's really important to make that distinction. These powers only come into force when there is a serious human health risk. So you're right. Most of the times that doesn't arrive, thank God.
Okay.
But when it does, that's when these powers are triggered.
Minister,
and that's why these powers must stay.
Thank you, Minister.
Minister, you were in power for 9 years. You've been in power for 9 years. You didn't decide to make a single change to this until the last year. Why such a long time if you claim that this is such a serious, egregious issue? We've now heard that there were 350 issues, 31 that had public advisories, and only 3 that were uncooperative. Why not come up with a policy that will deal with those 3 rather than thousands and thousands? Canadian female entrepreneurs. This industry is primarily female entrepreneurs. I've been shocked by the number of constituents that have reached out to me, people from across the country that are really concerned about this, and it's primarily from women.
Yeah, and if they got the right information that this doesn't affect compliant businesses, then they wouldn't be concerned, and hopefully you'd help spread that. There was an attempt in 2014 to do this that was shot down by the then Conservative government. That's too bad. In 2016, we began negotiations as a government. And the reason why, I mean, look, you can't have it both ways. You can't attack us for not having enough consultations and then attack us because the consultations were too long. I mean, you got to pick one. So since 2016, we've been having consultations. And because of all the misinformation being thrown around, yeah, unfortunately, it's taken this long. And you both are attacking me for not having enough consultations. And now I'm being attacked for having too many.
I never attacked you for too many
Ms.
consultations.
Goodridge. The last round of questions for 3 minutes will go to Ms. Kayabaga, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Minister, I know there's been a lot of time that's been wasted to actually ask questions that can answer some of the concerns that people who are in the sector in our communities are having. Could you tell us, things that we should know? Like, for example, there's been a question around whether or not this is going to increase costs on Canadians, or any other thing that I may not have, 5 minutes to be able to ask, including the cost on Canadians. If you could debunk that, would be great.
Yeah, I think if you could spend, and I hope people who are in the industry watch this, to know I'm cheering for you. I want you to succeed. And just like when we had Smoke-Free Ontario come in and people told me, talking to the restaurant industry, this is the end of restaurants. It's going to destroy everything. Everybody's going to move elsewhere. Didn't happen, folks. You can go back and watch the videos on seatbelts. Going to destroy industry, going to make everything terrible. This is what happens, right? Is that, Conservatives use these arguments, this fear-mongering, that the end is going to happen. If you keep people safe, you're making this terrible choice. It's going to destroy industry. I would say to anybody in the industry that having the power when there is a serious human health issue, and only then, to be able to have the power to recall products and have fines determined by a court to make sure that the court can appropriately disincentivize that bad behavior and punish those who do it, is just good common sense, and it makes the Canadian brand strong. And if you're a compliant business, or you're a business that's even trying to be compliant, this will cost you exactly $0. And if you're a consumer, you're going to be able to see that made in Canada and know that the product you're taking is safe. That's worth a lot. And you know, when we sell that product around the world and they see made in Canada and they can see that it's safe, that's worth a lot. And I think we need to protect that. And one of the reasons why I'm being so forceful here today is because there's been so much misinformation that we have to spike through that misinformation so that people hear the truth. We should not fear. If you are a compliant business or a business trying to be compliant, you have no cost, nothing to fear here. Just like if you're not committing crimes, you don't have to worry about the punishments of a crime.
Why do you think that the Conservatives did not want to ask questions today specifically on this bill that they put forward?
Well, I think there's been the misinformation on this thing. It's existed in a very small quarter, and there's been some people very invested in spinning misinformation. And I think some people have been caught up in it. And I think that it's too bad that that has occurred.
Point of order.
Because the truth and the facts on this are completely separate and apart. And there's an important.
Please, we have a point of order from Ms. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I very specifically asked all of my questions directly on this bill. And so being characterized of avoiding questions on this bill is completely misleading to Canadians.
Ms. Goodrich, a point of interruption is not a point of order and doesn't take precedence over the questions and answers. Quite frankly, you know better. 30 seconds, Mr. Minister.
I'll end on this. Right now, we're seeing a return of measles, of tuberculosis, of syphilis, and it's because of misinformation. It's got to stop. We can cross swords in a lot of places, but misrepresenting health and misrepresenting what is happening in health costs lives, and we can't afford it. So let's have a straight conversation about what is and is not happening, and let's stop in the nonsense of peddling misinformation.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for the extra time that you've afforded us. Good luck with your press conference. I hope this is the most challenging thing you have to do today. We're going to suspend for 3 or 4 minutes to allow the minister to take his leave and to have Mr. Lee join us. So we'll.
Yeah, gang. So, again, I've been up for, I don't know what it is by now, almost 2 days. A day and a half. Anyhow, I've got to run. That's the end of Holland. The rest of the committee's all right. That's the most impressive part. Like right there, the guy just lies like it's telling the truth. Like that's the sign of a very, very sick person for whatever reason that he's sick. Like, I don't know if he's a sociopath or psycho. Don't think he's really a psycho. He's a narcissist and he's a victim and he's woke and fake. Every time I see a liberal, every single time, and they start talking, like, because some of them look like pleasant people. The only thing I've ever seen Cpac do, and I watch a lot of this stuff, the only thing she does is in the House of Commons question period, she'll do one of those tee-up questions or law ball questions for her own side. And then there she is in committee talking bullshit. It's disgusting. Anyhow, can't let them get you down. Like, all we can do is watch this stuff, I believe. Like, and tell other people, like, and to watch it in context. Because if you just saw a clip on the news, you would think that the Tories had a chance to ask questions, and they didn't, because she was misleading. So that woman is I almost dropped a word that we're not allowed to use in chat here, because she is. See you next Tuesday, Cpac. Like, just absolutely disgusting. Anyhow, on that note, Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm just trying this. This is not something that I might be able to do all the time because I can't type. And I do like interacting more with the audience, like saying hello, because I'd love to say hello to everybody. But in this interface, I don't even get a list. See, maybe I can find one on my other computer. Yeah, we're going to give this a quick try, guys. And forgive me if I'm having any audio. It's a pretty big step changing softwares. And the only reason I was doing it was I wanted people to have a chance to see their participation in the chat close to real time. It's a big task when you're doing a few other things at the same time. Anyhow, we've got two flips. Thank you for hanging out. Bob Boom, my brother, what's shaking? We've got Kathy Pennington, how are you doing tonight? Chris Soknanovich, what is going on? Kokretenzi, what's going on? Data Center, good to see you, brother. Drew Smith, sorry about the confusion, man. I have no idea what's up with that. So I like having you around. You're funny. You're no idea. Harry Taint, always a pleasure, man. Mark Works, funny guy. Love having you here. Mary Atwell, always a pleasure when you drop in. Say hello. Mudkip1, what's going on, brother? Natalie Stafford. There are so many people like you that are funny in here. It's awesome. Because it is hard to laugh at. A lot of this is hard to swallow. Alette, again, another person that I very much enjoy having in the chat room. Patty Zadow. I think, Patty, you've been hanging with me since just about the very beginning, which it's just past a year now. Rapunzel, what's going on? Good to see you back. Rich Man, what is going on? Are you a rich man? Is that what that is? I don't know. Savage Silence, what is shaking? Are you really in Cuba? Just curious. Anyways, guys, I'm wrapping up. We're and also I can't run the titles in this software the way that I used to scroll the members' names through. That's a lot to stay on top of anyhow. So we'll go out on this. This is a great song. I love this piece. Like, imagine how many times I've heard it, because like I have to put it in a lot of my videos. I hear this song 30 times a day and it still makes me happy. Anyways, gang, we're getting out. Like, share, subscribe, get notified. We'll be back on Monday with some live shows. I'm not sure what I'll be doing this weekend. I'm probably going to sleep for... That happens. Has that ever happened to you when you just miss a night's sleep? Like, and then you drag your ass around for a couple of days, but you slowly recover? Like, nothing happened. I just didn't sleep last night. Like, trying to get this software going. We got it going. We're out, guys. Thank you all for hanging with us. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh, yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Oh, yeah.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises. WTF. Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The worst that works.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
Selves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
Just like you,
the
man.
culture of drugs. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. Got the briefcase. It's on the game, though, right?